The move begins with an aerial shot of the bustling streets, capturing pedestrians strolling in every direction. However, the tranquility is short-lived, as a woman's erratic behavior disrupts the scene. She begins to tremble and undress, drawing a crowd that quickly starts recording her with their phones. Amidst the chaos, two passers-by rush to her side, offering comfort and support as they cover her up. The distressed woman confides in them, revealing that she's hearing voices, but they gently reassure her that the voices are just a product of her mind. Just then, the man approaches the crowd, furious at the onlookers for exploiting the woman's vulnerable state. He gets angry at them for recording her instead of helping. The other woman, who is also helping the woman in distress, questions whether Lee, the man, personally knows her. Eventually, an ambulance arrives, and as the ambulance disappears into the distance, Lee stands looking through his window, still clutching the blanket belonging to the kind stranger who had tried to comfort the distressed woman. Later that night, while scrolling through the internet, he's dismayed to find that the video of the woman's public breakdown has gone viral. The footage shows her and vulnerable, with no regard for her privacy or well-being. The next day, Lee coaches a junior basketball team. After the practice, he steps into the elevator to head home, but is surprised to find the woman from the incident standing beside him. The air is thick with awkward silence as they both avoid eye contact for some reason. When they arrive, Lee hurries to his apartment, retrieves the forgotten blanket, and returns it to the lady. She teasingly tells him to say more than hi the next time they see each other. She then proceeds to introduce herself as Yan Yan. Lee responds with his introduction, and the two go their separate ways. Lee spots Yan Yan on the bus the next day. The man watches her from afar and is somewhat pleased with the sight. He just keeps staring, jumping from seat to just catch a glimpse of her. Later, as he arrives home, Lee witnesses Yan Yan engaged in a heated argument with someone. Her expressions seem strained, which leaves him concerned. Just then, Yan Yan appears at his doorstep seeking refuge, and Lee welcomes her into his apartment. The two sit down, surrounded by the warmth of his home. As they converse, Yan Yan tells him how her father gets violent after drinking. She then inquires about his living situation, asking if he lives with his mother. Lee's expression turns somber, and he reveals that he used to live with her, but she has now passed away. He recalls how his mother used to tell him that no one would love him the way she does. The vulnerability in his eyes reveals a deep sense of longing. Yan Yan and Lee continue to spend more and more time together, getting to know each other better. One day, while coming back home, she asks Lee if he has a girlfriend, but he says no. He claims he has never had one, and Yan Yan wonders why a nice guy like him hasn't. All of a sudden, Yan Yan gets quite playful. She sneaks up to Lee and kisses him, then runs away again. Lee blushes as he goes after her. Lee's rehab sessions become a source of anxiety as he navigates his feelings for Yan Yan. He hears stories from others in the group who have struggled to maintain relationships due to their schizophrenia diagnosis. One man's partner distanced themselves after learning about his condition, while a woman vows to keep her illness a secret from her partner, even if it means facing rejection. Lee feels pressured to reveal his truth to Yan Yan and decides to write his confession in a notebook, fearing her potential reaction. Lee and Yan Yan's romantic trysts continue, filled with excitement and affection. One day, as they walk home together, Lee musters the courage to reveal his secret, grabbing Yan Yan's arm and pulling out a notebook. However, their intimate moment is interrupted by Yan Yan's father, causing Lee to falter and postpone his confession. He returns home, weighed down by the burden of his untold truth, unable to shake off the feeling of guilt and anxiety that comes with hiding his truth from the one he loves. Lee's world begins to knit even more as he discovers Yan Yan's father is aware of his mental health struggles. The father's harsh words and threats to Yan Yan to stay away from Lee as he is mentally ill spark a desperate reaction in Lee, who rushes to their apartment, pleading for her to listen. However, his cries for attention are met with silence, and instead, he's confronted by Yan Yan's father, who demands he leave. In a bizarre and unsettling turn, Lee's behavior becomes erratic. Frustrated and annoyed, he claims he is now sane and physically lashes out at the older man. The situation escalates, with Yan Yan's father defending himself and pushing Lee to the ground, hitting him across the face. The commotion draws in the neighbors, who witness the disturbing scene unfold. Yan Yan's father defends himself, shouting to the gathering neighbors that Lee is the aggressor. Meanwhile, Lee lies on the ground, whimpering and broken, as Yan Yan rushes to his side, tears streaming down her face. Yan Yan's father demands everyone get inside, but the damage is done, and his menacing threat hangs in the air. He vows to beat Lee every time he sees him. As everyone retreats into the homes, Lee remains on the floor whimpering. He later drags his body out and goes to sit at the stop. Yan Yan seeks out Lee at the stop, his usual spot where he sits injured and hurt. She sits beside him and declares her unwavering love and acceptance, despite his struggles with mental health. Her words are a balm to Lee's soul, and he's overcome with emotion. Yan Yan places her hand in his, offering him comfort and reassurance. Lee, still in disbelief, takes out his phone to record her words and plays them back. As he rises to leave, Yan Yan envelops him in a warm embrace from behind. The atmosphere is now filled with a mixture of joy and sadness. Lee turns to Yan Yan, and they share a heartfelt, tear-filled hug. As time progresses, Lee's world is turned upside down when he discovers that Yan Yan, the love of his life, is actually Yip, a postgraduate researcher studying patients like him. The revelation triggers an episode, and Lee plays the recording of Yan Yan's heartfelt declaration to cope with the overwhelming emotions. He keeps thinking if she was only being kind for her research. Is all that she said fake? When Lee confronts Yip, she seems oblivious to their past encounters, leaving him bewildered and questioning his sanity. The blanket, a tangible symbol of their connection, still in his possession, further fuels his confusion. Did he truly return it? Did their love story unfold in reality, or solely in his mind? The lines between reality and delusion blur, and Lee's grip on sanity begins to slip. The possibility that his love life was a product of his schizophrenia raises haunting questions. Was Yan Yan merely a figment of his imagination, a coping mechanism for his struggles? Or was their love real, and Yip's denial a mere coincidence? Yip, on the other hand, whose research on erotomania, a delusional disorder where a person believes someone, often a celebrity, is in love with them, is met with skepticism by Dr. Feng. The case of the two women claiming to be Andy Lau's wives serves as a fascinating example, but Dr. Feng remains unimpressed. When Yip can't produce a real-life case to support her research, Dr. Feng dismisses the topic, refusing to approve it until Yip can find concrete evidence. As Dr. Feng exits the room, Yip is left with a challenge. She must find a genuine case of erotomania to validate her research. Yip, still reeling from Dr. Feng's dismissal, is offered a supportive ear by Simon, who promises to help her find alternative cases. She accepts his ride home, and her dizziness subsides, but her mind remains preoccupied with the challenge ahead. The next day, Lee seeks Yip's expertise, sharing a vivid dream where he transforms into a goat, pursued by a little girl. As he delves deeper, he claims to have had a romantic relationship with the girl for 2 months. Lee's conviction that they dated for 2 months raises eyebrows, and Yip's curiosity is piqued. Yip's time for the day runs out as Lee is her last patient. She reschedules their meeting for the following week and assigns him homework to write down every experience he's had with his imaginary lover in as much detail as possible. Yip presents her report to Dr. Feng. She reviews it and notices a significant omission. Dr. Feng points out that Yip mentioned Lee's loss of his mother last year, but asks if she didn't explore his relationship with her. Yip nods, indicating she did ask about it. Lee had said his mother loved him deeply, and that no one could ever love him like she did. Dr. Feng is surprised this wasn't included in the report, as it could be a major obstacle to Lee's ability to form real romantic connections, potentially contributing to his delusional romance. Yip apologizes for overlooking the significance of Lee's relationship with his mother. Dr. Feng observes that Yip and Lee share similar issues, stemming from their past experiences. She reminds Yip of her own childhood, where her mother would physically and tell her that she didn't want Yip, just like how no one else does. Dr. Feng reveals that she had conducted an in-depth analysis of Yip and found those words to have had a profound impact. She cautions Yip against letting those words influence her. The conversation is interrupted by Dr. Chan, who invites them to the opening of her center. Yip and Dr. Feng accept the invitation and attend the event. Meanwhile, Lee, while working at the library, discovers a book on dream interpretation, which triggers flashbacks of his dream, where he is a goat being chased by a little girl. During his next session with Yip, Lee believes he's making progress due to medication, but Yip thinks it only masks the underlying issues. As Yip talks, Lee's mind wanders back to his delusional moments with Yan Yan. Yip opens up about her own traumatic experiences with her mother, and how psychology helped her cope. She shows Lee a bracelet her mother gave her, which she initially refused to wear due to her hatred. However, after counseling, she forgave her mother and found the strength to wear it. Overcome with emotion, Yip suggests they take a break and exit the room. As Yip exits the room, Lee settles back into his chair, lost in thought. He recalls the night Ling was found nude on the streets, the night where it all began, the night when his delusional romance set sail. With his head tilted back, Lee becomes absorbed in the memory. Yip returns to find him in this contemplative state. As Lee opens his eyes to find Yip standing before him, he launches into an enthusiastic monologue. His lover's name is Yan Yan, and she lives just a floor above him. Yip's interest is piqued, and she grabs her pen, urging Lee to share more about Yan Yan. As Lee describes his imaginary lover, there is a striking resemblance between Yan Yan's attributes and that of Yip. Yip then asks Lee to elaborate on aspects of Yan Yan beyond physical appearance. Did they ever touch? Lee's response is telling. She felt real, just like anyone else. Yip presses Lee for more details about their encounter, asking if they shared a kiss. Lee hesitantly admits they did, but feels uneasy discussing the intimate moment. To deflect the conversation, Lee suggests writing down his experience instead. Yip hands him a journal, and he takes it home with him. The scene cuts to Yip being intimate with Simon. However, her mind wanders back to her previous encounter with Lee. Even as she's physically engaged with Simon, her thoughts linger on Lee. After they finish, Simon mentions that he's nearly completed analyzing her research data, and then he leaves. The day approaches for Yip and Lee to have their usual sessions together, but Lee skips his next meeting with Yip, leaving her searching for him. She tries to get in touch with him through Joe, but no one can reach him. Undeterred, Yip decides to visit Lee's apartment, seeking a face-to-face conversation. When Lee sees Yip, he instinctively wraps his arms around her in a warm hug. However, Yip quickly pushes him away, taken aback by the sudden display of affection. Flustered, Lee claims he mistook her for Yan Yan, his face flushing with embarrassment as he hastily retreats into his house. Yip and Lee cross paths again the next day. Yip wonders if Lee has returned from their counseling sessions, but he clarifies that he's only there to see Joe. He apologizes if his absence affected her research, but Yip graciously assures him it's okay, mentioning she can adjust the topic and delay her graduation if needed. With a sense of closure, Yip bids Lee farewell, wondering if their paths will ever cross again. As she walks away, Lee attempts to call out to her, but hesitates, changing his mind, and so he lets her go. Eventually, Lee opens up to Yip about Yan Yan. He shares how he felt liberated to be himself around her without the need for a mask, as he usually wore masks to escape the world when around people. He fondly recalls their effortless conversations, fueled by a deep understanding. Gradually, Yip gains a deeper insight into Lee's personality. One evening, they coincidentally head in the same direction and walk together. During their stroll, Yip receives a call from Simon, who cancels their plans due to an unexpected trip with his wife. Lee and Yip then board a crowded bus, finding themselves squished together, their noses almost touching as they stand shoulder to shoulder for the duration of the ride. It's an awkward yet intimate moment between the two. When the two arrive, Yip invites Lee into her apartment. As they enter her home, Yip makes a bold gesture by kissing Lee out of the blue. However, Lee is caught off guard, shocked and terrified, prompting him to hastily flee the scene. Realizing her mistake, Yip instantly regrets her actions, feeling apologetic for crossing professional boundaries and making Lee uncomfortable or even scared. She promptly sends him a text message, apologizing for her unprofessional behavior and acknowledging her mistake. Lee responds understandingly, downplaying the incident and revealing his concern about potentially dragging Yip down as her patient. Yip's curiosity gets the better of her, and she asks if Lee can see her apartment from his place, as he mentioned earlier. He guides her to look for the one with the flashing light, and as he flashes his light, Yip gazes out the window, smiling as she spots it. In a playful gesture, she flashes her light back. The tender night ends with Lee texting her and wishing her a happy birthday. Yip and Lee meet again the next day, sitting together at the bus stop. Yip initiates a gentle gesture, reaching out to touch Lee's hair, then sits down beside him in comfortable silence. She breaks the silence by asking about his favorite quality in Yan Yan, and Lee's face lights up with a warm smile. He shares that he adores Yan Yan's genuineness, revealing that she never lied to him, a trait that resonated deeply with him. Afterward, Yip decides to end her relationship with Simon, approaching him with honesty and directness. She communicates her desire to move on, and after a moment of processing, Simon appears to accept the decision, even claiming he'll find another partner to collaborate on their research project. Yip shifts her focus to Lee's homework, delving into his written account of his experiences with Yan Yan, his delusional girlfriend. As she reads, Yip gains a deeper understanding of Lee's consciousness, his emotions, and his perceptions. Yip and Lee sit down for another session, this time live and recorded for an audience of fellow psychologists, including Dr. Feng. Yip begins by inquiring about Lee's insomnia, and he reports a noticeable improvement. Yip seizes on this progress, asking Lee to explore what might be driving the change. However, she quickly picks up on Lee's unease, recognizing that the recording equipment might be making him uncomfortable. She offers to stop the recording, but Lee insists on continuing. As the session progresses, Lee reveals his secret love for a girl, confessing that he doesn't see a future together. When Yip probes for reasons, Lee admits to feeling out of her league. Yip then inquires about the recurring dreams, and Lee confirms they persist. She asks if the dreams have evolved, and the scene shifts to a flashback of the dream. In the dream, a goat is buried in a grave, while a young girl in a wedding gown marries another boy. Onlookers begin to cover the goat with sand. Lee starts to interpret the symbolism behind the dreams, wondering if the goat represents him in reality, and the little boy represents him in fantasy. Yip observes that Yan Yan brings Lee both fear and happiness, suggesting he can live with her in his fantasies. Lee becomes terrified, thinking his fantasy self is trying to bury his reality self, trapping him forever. Yip connects the cemetery to Lee's mother, symbolizing his inability to let go. Yip also hints that the wedding in the cemetery represents eternal love, a yearning Lee can't shake. Yip believes Lee subconsciously clings to the fantasy of Yan Yan, despite claiming he wants to let go. She produced the assignment he wrote, describing his experience with Yan Yan. Yip felt the account was so vivid it seemed real, and urges Lee to confront reality, tear up the paper, and discard his illusions to find true love. Lee takes the paper from Yip, gazing at the words before ripping it apart. This act seems to liberate him, as in his dream, the boy uncovers the buried goat and cradles it gently. Later, Dr. Feng and Yip are seated face to face, and she offers her critique of Yip's session. She believes Yip was too forceful, pushing Lee to abandon his fantasies rather than guiding him to self-discovery. Dr. Feng reminds Yip that their role is to help patients understand their thoughts, not dictate what they should do. She cautions that Lee's reliance on imagination may be a coping mechanism, and forcing him to relinquish it could be harmful. Dr. Feng suggests that Lee's journey is far from over, and he still hasn't found true love in reality. Yip apologizes for her impulsive approach, and Dr. Feng cautions her to be aware of Lee's potential transference, where he may project his emotions onto her. Dr. Feng reminds Yip to maintain professional boundaries and avoid getting too personally involved. Despite this, Dr. Feng commends Yip on her overall handling of the session and encourages her to continue refining her skills. As Yip and Lee walk home that night, their conversation turns to the place where Lee and Yan Yan share their first kiss. In a surprising moment, Lee reveals his true feelings, telling Yip she's the real one. He looks deep into Yip's eyes as if just receiving a revelation. As time progresses, the two go on a date, and Yip suggests ending their counseling sessions due to their newfound relationship. However, Lee advises against it, proposing they complete the remaining 2 sessions. He reassures her that once their sessions are over, no one will be concerned about their relationship. That night, on their journey home, Yip and Lee share a passionate kiss on the cold, dark streets, but their intimacy is interrupted by a certain Uncle Wong, Yip's mother's ex-boyfriend. This encounter with him reveals a dark secret from Yip's past. Yip is overwhelmed with shame and guilt, confessing to Lee that she had a sexual relationship with her mother's ex-boyfriend. She feels like she's failed to escape her mother's legacy, and so this guilt haunts her. Lee tries to offer comfort and support, but Yip pushes him away, struggling with her self-disgust. However, the next morning, Lee remains by her door, telling her he's had time to think and doesn't mind her past. Yip breaks down in tears, and Lee holds her, allowing her to release her emotions. Their emotional connection deepens as they share an intimate moment. Afterward, they head to the counseling center. At the counseling center, Lee and Yip part ways briefly. Lee stands outside when he suddenly spots Yan Yan. Terrified and confused, Lee flees into the building. Inside, he doesn't find Yan Yan anymore, but he finds Yip in a difficult situation. Dr. Feng is furious with Yip due to footage of her and Lee kissing, deeming it an unacceptable breach of professional boundaries. Despite Yip's promises to separate her personal and work life, Dr. Feng is resolute. Lee, who is looking through the door of the office, is overwhelmed with emotion as Joe sees him from inside. Joe goes outside to meet Lee as he tries to explain the situation to the terrified boy. He feels betrayed and accuses Joe of retaliating against Yip for rejecting his date. Dr. Feng intervenes, reiterating that clients and patients cannot associate, and instructs Joe to stabilize Lee's emotions. As Yip departs, Lee tries to defend her, but Dr. Feng is firm. Yip must leave Lee alone for their good. Yip is devastated, learning that Lee's charity wants to expel her and demanding she never contact Lee again. Yip pleads to be punished instead, but Dr. Feng insists that leaving Lee is the responsible thing to do, as relationships reveal weaknesses. Undeterred, Yip tries calling Lee, but he doesn't respond. She decides to visit him, determined to be with him and help him through his struggles. At his apartment, Yip finds Lee in a state of distress, his house in disarray, as he searches for a diary Yan Yan requested. Lee's episode worsens, and he begs Yip not to leave him, momentarily confusing her with Yan Yan. All of a sudden, Lee's grip on reality falters, and he becomes torn between Yip and Yan Yan. Yip tries to ground him, confessing her love, while Yan Yan goads him, claiming Yip will abandon him due to his illness. The internal conflict overwhelms Lee, leading to a breakdown. Yip reassures him of her love, but Lee's fragile mental state makes him vulnerable to Yan Yan's manipulations. In a heart-wrenching scene, Lee hits his head against the wall, yelling at Yan Yan to silence her voice. Yip rushes to comfort him, and Lee, overcome with emotions, collapses into her arms. Despite this, he remains convinced that everyone, including Yip, will eventually leave him. As Lee goes to the washroom, Yip recognizes the severity of his condition and contacts the psychiatric hospital, seeking help for the man she loves. The situation is dire, and Lee's future hangs in the balance. 3 months have passed, and Yip faces the association's board, who offer her a second chance with conditions, including staying away from Lee. Yip, unable to accept this, declines the offer, choosing to prioritize her love for Lee over her career as a counselor. She rushes to see Lee, who has just returned from the hospital, and shares her decision to pursue a new path as a clinical psychologist. Lee, still grappling with his mental health, reveals that he'll need lifelong medication and fears his relapses will harm those around him, including her. Despite this, Yip reaffirms her love and commitment to Lee, recalling his previous words of support, as he was there for her when she revealed her dark past. However, Lee, who is determined to protect her, walks out on her. He suggests that they both wake up from their dreams. Yip, heartbroken, watches him go. The two part ways, but their love lingers. In a heart-wrenching finale, they reunite in a dream, sharing a passionate kiss as they lay in bed, their eyes closed. The scene fades with the sense that their love will live forever, even if reality keeps them apart.